Hello and good evening to all of you. Thanks for coming to our good panel, hopefully informative on housing and what's happening in our community in that regard. My name is Tim Platt. I just wanted to give you a quick update on a very important project for us, and that is the naming of the easiest way to get up to the Franklin Hills over by the high school, naming that canyon after Barbara Woodburn, the famous Barbara Woodburn. Barbara is an icon in our community. She is storied activities and escapades. She heard that a bunch of landowners up there in the Fragile Hills were going to petition the city to put in 500 housing units on those hills. And she heard further that the city council, that the planning commission had already decided that they weren't going to do an EIR, an environmental impact report, which is really critical. And she got mad and she started fighting, and it took a while and it took people with her, but she got that EIR, and that was the foundation that has ended up with 1,500 acres of open space stretching all the way from the John Muir House down to the water, over to Port Costa, and eventually on to Crockett. So we want to honor her. We want people to know about her story. We put together a petition, we put together the paperwork, we presented to the city council and the city just about a week ago. We went to the city council and gave them a short presentation of what we're doing and what the steps are. The next step in this process is going to be at the Park and Rec Commission meeting in probably 2 or 3 weeks. And we would want, when that's announced, if you see it, come down and support this. Just say a few words. Let people on the commission know what this is about in your minds. And we'll get that canyon name for them. And did I leave anything else? I'm going to do this. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So thank you for the prompter. If you want to learn about Barbara or about this petition, go on over here. Don't go too far with it. My wife always said I go too far. Just stick your teeth in this QR code and you'll get the whole. You get the packet that shows a 1-hour tremendous interview with her that Jane Moore and her group put together, and all the other background information on what we're trying to do with that. And then the other thing I would ask to mention just quickly is that on the 25th, Friday, at 12, between 12 to 1, April 25th, there's going to be an appreciation event at the John Muir Historic Site for all of the federal workers who are making it possible for us to have a great park here. So you'll see more on this, but keep your eyes open. I'm sure they'll have refreshments, and that should be a fun time. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Tim is a geographic landmark in Martinez.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Adams. I'm the co-chair of 1,000 Friends of Martinez with Mark Thompson, who's running tech over here. I want you to know that we're live on Zoom. We're live here in the VFW hall. We're live on Zoom, and we're recording this to go out on our social media and to our e-blast list, which is over 10,000 people. So 1,000 Friends of Martinez works to protect Martinez parks and open space, to improve our city government, and to defend our quality of life. Some of that includes responding to development policies or projects. And recently, a local columnist has been spinning a series of incorrect assumptions about 1,000 Friends' position on housing, because we encouraged the city to update its 1973 general plan, and we've tried to improve the city's housing element with various suggestions as the state-driven process has evolved. Development is always controversial, especially in existing neighborhoods. So at tonight's panel, our experts will discuss housing issues and trends in Martinez. Do we need more housing, considering that our population has shrunk? Many of our state legislators think so, and they're reducing environmental review for projects. Our Neighborhood Voices is working out an initiative to return local control of housing to local jurisdictions. Our housing element has not yet been accepted by the state, which gives developers potentially more power, but they haven't taken advantage of it yet. 1,000 Friends is not opposed to development, but location and quality of development matter. Martinez is a hidden gem. We've controlled growth, but development pressures are increasing. In the time of climate change, sea level rise, fire danger, and insurance prices are becoming bigger issues. State housing laws usually don't include funding for impacts, for roads, for transit and parking. Workforce housing is being considered at the adult school site, and the process is just starting. So we wanted to have a conversation with the community about housing. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to tell you that after this intro that I've just done, I'm also going to have cleanup at the end, but I'll let them do self-introductions about who they are and why they're here. But I'm obviously the co-chair of Thousand Friends of Martinez. We have Brianne Zorn, the mayor of Martinez, Michael Cass, the Martinez planning manager, Tim Farley, a former council member and a realtor at Dudum Real Estate Group, Helen Rossi, the school superintendent at the Martinez Unified School District, and Susan Candell from Our Neighborhood Voices, who's also on the Lafayette City Council. Now that I've done this basic intro, they're each going to take 8 to 10 minutes. We've got a yellow and red card that goes up at 8 and 9 minutes to give you sort of their take on housing issues. And so with a group as varied as this, we're going to get a lot of different points of view. And then at the end of that, I'm going to do about 5 minutes of cleanup. And we're going to have a Q&A with questions from the audience or that have been presented to us before and so on. So thank you all for coming. Are you ready to go, Michael?
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Michael Cass. I'm the planning manager with the city of Martinez. I grew up in Contra Costa County, started my career in the city of Lafayette, which is how I know Susan, and worked very closely with everyone actually on the panel here this evening. I want to give a little bit of context so we're all kind of talking from the same page. I think it would be really helpful. So within the state of California, every local jurisdiction is required to have a general plan. And there's 7 mandatory elements of the general plan, and one of them is a housing element. And a housing element really does 2 main things. It's required to plan for locations where housing can be built, and it's housing of all affordability levels. So it's everything from market rate to affordable housing. Additionally, a housing element is required to include programs which are largely related to policy initiatives that will be adopted and implemented by a local jurisdiction that help to streamline and facilitate the construction of housing. I think there's oftentimes a misnomer that's out there, and I want to make sure that that's clear, is cities are not required to build housing, but they are required to regulate and allow a process for housing to be evaluated. We are in a very interesting time right now. So as was indicated, the city of Martinez does not have a certified housing element. I will share that our housing element has been adopted by the city council, and the state has indicated that our housing element itself complies. They do have some concerns of some of the rezoning that we did, and so we do need to make some amendments there. But where we are planning for housing and the programs that we've proposed, they've indicated that those are in alignment and in compliance with what's required for state law. As I indicated, we're in a very interesting time. There are more bills that are being passed at the state level right now than in history. Last year, there were approximately 75 bills that were signed by the governor that directly impact planning and zoning related issues. This year, there are over 300 that have been introduced. So with that, it is a very challenging environment to be in, not only for city staff and elected officials from an implementation standpoint, but also a challenging situation to be in for developers and the general public, because the rules and regulations are changing at a very, very rapid rate. In terms of the big kind of changes that we're starting to see, one is a lot of projects now, if certain requirements are met, they're what's considered a by right approval. So a by right approval means that a local jurisdiction cannot apply environmental review, or they cannot impose a discretionary process, meaning that a project gets evaluated, does it comply with certain standards that are codified in the code? And those are largely related to density, height, setbacks, lot coverage requirements, et cetera. The other thing that's important to note is it's actually been on the books for quite some time, but there is a law is referred to as state density bonus law. And state density bonus law allows a developer, if they provide a certain level of affordable housing as part of a project, that they do not need to adhere to a certain prescribed number of standards that the city has in place. The higher and greater number of affordable units that are provided as part of that project, the greater number of concessions and waivers that can be granted as part of a project. Now that I've set that context, I'll kind of talk about a few things that the city has really been prioritizing in terms of bringing us into compliance with state law, as well as priorities that have been directed by the Planning Commission and City Council. A big area that we've really been focusing on, and really the primary area where we have seen housing development over the last couple of years, is within our accessory dwelling unit regulations. And an accessory dwelling unit is when someone proposes a attached or detached independent living unit. Oftentimes they're really small. They can be referred to as granny flats or in-law units or other terminology for them. So some things that we've done to streamline them is we've completely done a comprehensive update to our regulations. We've created a accessory dwelling unit bonus program where you can have an additional accessory dwelling unit if you agree to deed restrict it as an affordable housing unit. We've also legalized the construction of accessory dwelling units on religious institution sites, which is a fairly unique thing for Martinez. And then finally, we are in the process of developing prototype plans, which are going to be available to all members of our community, where the plans are full design and ready to go. And we've already reviewed them against our building code requirements, so it helps save money when an individual wants to do one on their property. A couple other areas where we've really kind of pushed for and prioritized from a housing standpoint to implement the directive of the state is we adopted an overlay district for Alhambra Avenue. It's a primary gateway into our community. Can be considered an underdeveloped area of our community, and it's an area that we really would love to see some additional housing and redevelopment. So there's more of an entryway and a sense of community as you're coming into the downtown. So we adopted that a little over a year ago. No one has taken advantage of that yet, but potentially in the near future. Another effort that we implemented last year, which actually has been used, is I mentioned state density bonus law earlier. We in Martinez, we actually adopted our own version of state density bonus law, and what we refer to it as is it's our development incentives and community benefit program. So, and under that program, it allows a developer, and it's not just housing developers, but it's commercial developers and also industrial properties, to have a slight deviation from our standards in exchange for providing a community benefit. And in terms of that community benefit, it could be an on-site improvement that normally wouldn't be required. It could be an off-site improvement in the general facility, or it could be a contribution towards one of our two funds, our Affordable Housing Fund or our Marina Fund. I will share that we had our first project that's taken advantage of it. It was Trans-Montane in our industrial area. They are exceeding our height requirement, and they are required to pay 5% of their total project cost to the city towards our towards our Marina Fund. So that will have some improvements that we'll be able to see outside of the housing arena. Potentially there will be some housing projects that take advantage of that as well. Those are the big things that I wanted to kind of talk about that we've been really prioritizing. Actually, I'm going to do one more, I apologize. The last one that we actually kicked off at a meeting earlier this week on Tuesday, and feel free to listen to that meeting online. We did have a discussion about establishing multifamily and mixed use objective design standards. So earlier as part of the conversation, I talked about the state has made a number of changes where a lot of projects are a by right approval right now, meaning the city doesn't have discretion. Well, we've now are proposing to add additional standards that do deal with the aesthetics of what a building will look like, that are unique to Martinez, to hopefully have higher quality projects even when we can't impose discretion. So thank you very much.
I have a perfect 10 minutes. It was, wasn't it? Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Brianne Zorn. I'm the mayor of Martinez, and Seth gave me a hard time. He says I always go over time, so I promise my words are going to be short. So it's so nice to see so many friendly faces in the room this evening. I want to thank 1,000 Friends for their support of both of my successful campaigns for both city council and for the mayor. I think we in the city of Martinez are very lucky to have 1,000 Friends here as they advocate for open space, transparency, and good government. And I think that in the years that I've been on council as the mayor, I think we've made some major inroads in transparency and good government. And tonight you have 2 representatives from the city having these conversations. And I think that that is a really big deal. One thing though, with these themes, it's often manifested as an opposition to development and housing. So there has been this assumption over the years that the opposition to housing is what will maintain the great quality of life that we've established in Martinez. So tonight, I'm hoping that we can kind of have that conversation about how we can possibly change the assumption that housing is inherently bad. And that we can change the assumption to, yes, we need more housing in Martinez, but to Seth's comment at the very beginning, we want to support high quality housing, housing in the right place, housing that looks the way that we would like it to look within the confines of objective design standards rather than subjective design standards. So I'm here tonight to hopefully address some of the fears that people might have. Please feel free to ask as many questions. I know we don't have a lot of time on the agenda, but I'll talk less so that we can have more time for talking. But I wanted to spend more time talking about some of the real issues with respect to housing. So some of the issues that I'm thinking about are, for example, enrollment in our schools is going down. Real issues such as people that are looking for their first 1-bedroom apartment have to plan on spending at least $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. Real issues such as Trader Joe's, which is what would be like the ideal scenario for the city of Martinez, if you talk to anybody, does not want to open in Martinez because we do not have enough car traffic trips to warrant them opening in our city. Real issues such as when we talk about ferry service in Martinez, which we all would love to see. One of the biggest critiques of Martinez is we don't have dense enough people living near where the ferry terminal might be to warrant having ferry service here. Real issues such as small businesses suffering due to lack of foot traffic downtown. And I would argue that is probably to do to several of our vacant spaces, right? We're underpopulated in the areas where we would want people to be able to walk and spend money. And real issues like working on economic development initiatives to attract tech companies, to create more jobs in Martinez, to make people want to move their more businesses to Martinez because we have a highly skilled workforce. So I hope that some of those things get you thinking about some of the positive reasons why housing might be a good idea. The state's already making it. We have to do it, so we may as well do it the way that we would like to see it in our town. So that's all I'm going to say for right now until we get to the Q&A session.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Tim Farley, and as Seth pointed out, I did serve a couple of terms on the city council and other activities along the way. But I'm also a third generation Marquesian. My family moved to Martinez in the 1920s, right after the rail bridge was completed. I had a great uncle who worked at the Alhambra High School as a shop teacher, Pop Henderson. I know the old timers may remember him, but he brought the family down. I'm going to let you in on a little secret about Martinez. And that's probably the best hidden gem in the area. And I've been in real estate for a while. I think everybody should own a home. And I think they should own the home here in Martinez, but that would be a bit difficult to have. But Martinez really is offering something that few other communities have, and that is a sense of community. When people come to me and say, Tim, I'm looking for a place, they come to Martinez for a specific reason. Martinez is unique in the Bay Area. There's probably 3 other communities that people talk about, or 3 communities in the Bay Area that people talk about that have this. The city of Alameda, the city of San Leandro, and the city of Martinez. We're unique among Bay Area communities. Families come, they stay. I like to say that if you go to Alhambra High School homecoming football game, the boys change, but the names on the jerseys have been here forever. But that's not always the case, because some of them have to move to Antioch. And I've heard many of my friends tell me, my God, Tim, the biggest mistake I ever made was moving to Antioch, because I can't afford to come back to my hometown. So there is some pressures to have additional housing in Martinez to provide for the children, the next generation of families that want to come. And the other trends that we're seeing here in Martinez is families are getting smaller, as the mayor pointed out. Birth rates are dropping, and if people do have children, they only have one. The other trend you're seeing is that people want to cash out with their California equity. So they bought a house in 1975 for $49,000, $49,505, or something like that. Well, now they've got $1.2 million, and most of that's equity. And so they're thinking about moving out of state. Maybe their children that don't live in Martinez anymore have moved away. So they're looking at leaving. They're taking their California equity. But I will say this, the state legislature passed a law, and the voters passed a measure called 59 or 60, which allows Californians to maintain their current property value, their current property taxes at their value. So in the past, you could move anywhere in Contra Costa. If you were over 59 years or 50 years old, you could move anywhere in Contra Costa and maintain that property tax rate. Now you can go to any county. So if you want to retire from Martinez and you want to go up to Siskiyou County, you can do that and maintain your existing property tax base. But that's another story for another day. Martinez still remains, in my opinion, one of the most valuable and one of the most affordable housing areas in the area. We also have heavy industry, which we can talk about, which has really impacted our ability to have higher values. But we all know about the refinery and its impacts on Martinez. But nevertheless, Martinez is a great place to live. We have great schools. The thing about Martinez is we're pretty much a one high school town, one comprehensive high school. Other than some of our friends in South Martinez, Martinez is a one middle school and one high school town. And so everybody mixes it up. The kids from Vine Hill and the Alhambra Valley and downtown and other socioeconomics. It's unique in the Bay Area in that we have that blend. We're not siloed. We mix it up, which makes for tremendous families and communities. So I can talk to you about trends. It's currently what we call a balanced market. The average home in Martinez is now $500 a square foot. I can go into all those details, facts and trends, or we can talk about other things. But if you have any questions, I can address that as well. But thank you for the opportunity to talk about living in Martinez and how we can make it better.
So, hold on. I think can you hear me? It says on, but I don't think it's on.
Why don't you take the other one?
That's it. Okay, not that I need this, right, Ron? Okay, so they wanted experts here tonight to talk about educational workforce housing, and I'm working on it, but I'm not quite there. I'm only 1/4 of a team. And Michael is another quarter, Annie Martin is another quarter, and my CBO, Andy Cannon, is another quarter. So about maybe a year and a half ago, we went to a CSBA, California School Boards Association conference, and Annie and I sat in on a workforce housing workshop in this conference. And we listened to a team from LA Unified talk about how they wanted to recruit and retain teachers. And that's a huge district. And I imagine they have a hard time filling all the positions that they have. So they built this workforce housing, and they lowered the rents, depending, they made their own schedule, they made their own laws about it, and so on and so forth. And they built these complexes, and they invited not only certificated, but they had classified staff as well, because it was hard to recruit and retain people, because it was hard to find places for them to live. They couldn't afford. So they would let them come in and live for a certain amount of years, depending on what they created. And during that time, they would save money. They would be at like a 30 or 40% lower rent, and they would save money and then investigate different ways to get grants to supplement for a down payment on mortgages and so on and so forth. And then at the end of their time, they'd have to, go and they would have money to go and invest in houses. And so CSBA started a program where they would take 4 or 5 different school districts and create a cohort, and they would work with UCLA City Labs and UC Berkeley, what was it called? And Michael can jump in and help me, because his brain is a lot less, he knows way more about this than me. So it's a lot less jumbled than mine, but it's a part of UC Berkeley. They're the 2 units that work with us and teach us about this stuff. So it just I had just finished building the 3rd elementary school, and I really enjoyed that part. And, for years of being an educator, I really, really like the construction part, and the design part is just interesting to me. So we came back, and they had an application process for it. I think we're the 5th cohort, but they were all big districts, but I threw a name in the hat anyway, and we got it. And we are, I think, the first small district to be a part of a cohort. So I had to build a team, and of course, thinking smartly, put Michael on the team, because I needed somebody who knew what they were doing in terms of zoning and planning, and Andy in terms of financing, because we have to figure out how to finance this. And then Andy, because the school board is an essential part, because it's California School Boards Association, you gotta have a school board member on there. And then I'm a think outside the box person. So, and of course I was in charge. Now that I'm retiring on June 30th, I'm like, this is something I don't want to give up, but we'll figure that out later. So, the board passed a resolution in August, and they said, they directed me to investigate. So we got on this cohort. We've had a couple of meetings so far. We have another one in April, and we are in the investigating phase. And so what happens is we are meeting at different sites that have already built this housing, their housing units, and they're built, every one of them is different. And every one of them has they work with their neighborhoods, they work with their communities, and they design and they build, and they, like I said, each one's different. And they put an interest survey out to the teachers first, and then they hire a firm to do a feasibility study. And all this is based upon district property that's not being used to its fullest capacity, okay? And we do a feasibility study. Is it something that the district can do? Can we afford to do it? Is it good for the community? Is it good for the school district? What benefits are we going to gain from this? What benefits are our staff going to gain? How's it going to work for us? And so we haven't even gotten to that part yet. We are still in the learning phase. We have 2 more classes, which are full. They're like, one of them is a whole day, and then we have a half day and another whole day. We have to go down south. We tried to go before, but unfortunately it was on fire and we couldn't land the plane. So we have to go to Burbank for the last one. But yeah, that was. piece, but I want to say it is very difficult for us. Our starting teacher salary is about 65,000. And I moved here from out of state. And when I moved here, I moved into an apartment in San Ramon with my husband, and I had my first child there. And it was lacking in San Ramon. There was no center of town. And I'm from a small New England town. And the meeting that was at the Tuesday night, I watched it. I couldn't go. I had a board meeting Monday and I couldn't go Tuesday. And I watched it and I heard the developer and one of the person who was on the planning commission, they talked about their identical town with the train station and the railroad track. I came from that town, but it was in Connecticut. And I swear to God, they would describe my hometown. So we're all in that row. And I didn't stop until I found Martinez. And my husband said if I had my way, I'd live on the house on the corner by Martinez Junior High, because I moved him here. I got him here and I raised my 3 kids here. And the ironic part, or the part that breaks my heart, is I still live here. But my oldest son, his wife and his 3 kids, they could not afford to buy a house here. They live in Atwater, and he has a beautiful 3-bedroom home with his 3 children and his wife, and he's made his life there. But he bought a house for $225,000, and he works in agriculture as a mechanic, and he's very successful, and he makes good money, and he has a beautiful piece of property and a home. And my second son, who works at the last, I don't know the name of it, but the last exit before you get to over the East Bay Bridge, he works on the tugboats. And he commutes once a month to West Sacramento, where him and his wife bought a beautiful home on a big lot, but he could afford to buy that house there, and they're having a baby and they're going to raise their family there. But he commutes once a month and he could afford to buy the house there. He couldn't afford to buy it. We looked and looked. He couldn't afford to buy a house here. And breaks my heart, because now I got 2 kids and I want them here. And my youngest son pays the $2,000 a month rent at 28 years old. He doesn't want to live with his father. And, he's just not at the married part. But I don't have my kids here. And this is where I wanted to raise them, and I can't. So we need, more housing. We need affordable housing. We need to do something here to be able to have our teachers coming in at the same salary as my youngest son has, to be able to live here where they work, or we're going to lose them, because it's hard to bring them in. We bring them in, we train them in our curriculum, and then they go. And then we're stuck. We have to train them again and train them again, which is using up our resources over and over and over. And it's hard. So that's why we're looking at that's why we're trying to do what we're doing. So, okay.
Could you reintroduce yourself again, Susan? I don't think we did that with Helen, and people might not have known who she was.
But everybody does know? I'm Helen Rossi, Superintendent of Martinez Street 5.
Thank you.
And a Martinez resident.
So hi, I'm Susan Candell. I'm actually the mayor of Lafayette, but I'm not here on behalf of my city. I'm here as an individual and the past president of our Neighborhood Voices. You may wonder, what's our Neighborhood Voices? It's an effort to get a California statewide ballot measure, like a Prop K or whatever, on the ballot that'll bring land use and zoning back to the cities away from the state. It's very simple. The wording there is very simple. Now you guys all know, and now everybody's been educated with all these housing elements going around about zoning and land use and how much the state has taken over. So like Michael said, since 2017, there's been a tsunami of bills from Sacramento. And they have basically taken away your voices. They've taken away my voice as mayor, Brianna's voices as mayor, and even Michael Pass's as a planning director. We have almost no say at all when a developer comes to our cities. And like Michael said, if they follow these rules, there's almost nothing we can do. And that rule basically translates to, if they give us 10% affordable units, which means 90% market rate, so 90% market rate units and 10% affordable, they can ignore all that your city has laid out in terms of your heights and your setbacks and your FARs and everything. And so it just, and I'll explain to you later why this isn't working. And why it's not working is the state has two tools in their pocket right now. It's upzoning and deregulation. And so upzoning, you guys are familiar with. It's when you take a plot of land, you've got your house or whatever, and right now you can only build one house, but all of a sudden you're allowed to build 6. Or downtown where you're allowed to build 3 stories, well, now you can build 7 stories. That's upzoning. The other thing is deregulation. The deregulation comes in 2 forms. It comes with taking away your voices and my voice as a city in order to be able to say anything about these projects. But it also means taking apart CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. They've absolutely gone hog wild on that as well. So this combination at this point, since 2017, I know you guys all feel it, has it actually increased the affordability in the state of California? We all know it hasn't. If these were working, we would have seen something happening, but it's not. And what's good about it is the scholars and academics, and they're all coming out with these studies now. They've got time to study it and go, upzoning and deregulation actually will not lead to affordable housing in any area. That's not the natural progression. For one, upzoning, it's easy. When all of a sudden you can build 6 units on your land and not just 1, what happened to your land price? What happened? Did it go up or did it go down? It went up. Because all of a sudden you can build something much more valuable on your land. And so our California land prices, who are the top of the nation in terms of prices, we just made them go up. And that's what Sacramento's been telling us to do. So unfortunately, these laws aren't working. So I'm an engineer by day. And that's my big problem with this, is that it's not going to work. And so whatever they've handed down to us is not going to solve our real life affordable housing crisis that we all want to solve. And so another thing is that by taking away your local leaders, and so basically you created this housing element very carefully with your city, right? And you've picked the areas that you want to upzone and build more housing that makes sense for your city, right? Unfortunately, the state usurping all your power onto that and having all these laws that upzone even outside of those areas, you can't plan. So none of us cities, we can't plan anymore to handle all this new development. All of a sudden, if it went straight up, we used to have developer agreements with big developers that came to your city. And what you could do is you could get them to mitigate some of the impacts and help you pay for the infrastructure your city needs to support all this big development. That's how it used to be played. Well, it's not played like that anymore. You get very small amount of impact fees. And guess who's going to foot the bill now for all the infrastructure from all this new density? It's us, right? It's the people who live there. And so it's back in the day when the cities had control, the state and the cities used to work together to try to solve our affordable housing crisis. That has been completely broken at this point. And so right now, our neighborhood voices, in the last couple of years, we haven't been fighting Sacramento and individual bills because we know the war is lost. We've lost the war. It's over. It's done. Like there's just no undoing the tsunami. There's no way to get out of this except for the initiative. But there is a bill right now, SB 79, and I don't know if you guys have heard about it anymore, but it's our favorite guy, Senator Scott Wiener from San Francisco, who's been the architect of all these bills since 2017. Smart guy, without a doubt, really smart guy. But what this bill is going to do is your city, Martinez, who has an Amtrak station, within a half a mile of that Amtrak station, you can build a 6-story, 10-unit apartment house anywhere by right. Nobody can say anything. So there are single-family neighborhoods within that half mile. I looked at the map and I went, okay, so basically 6 stories, 10 units anywhere. You have no say. They don't have to put in parking, none of that. Okay, this is coming down. If you can have a density bonus on top of that, like he's talking about, you can go 50% bigger if you give us 10% affordable units. And you can ignore all your heights, all your setbacks, all your parking, all your everything. So this is what Senator Scott Wiener's doing across the state of California. It also does light rail. It also does high quality bus stops. I looked at your map and I think you guys have really nice bus systems here in Martinez. Okay, so within a quarter mile or half a mile, every single one of those bus stops, those high quality bus stops, 6 stories, 10 units right next to your house. And you have no say and your city has no say and it's going in. And like I said, why I'm so angry about all this stuff is it's not helping us solve our affordable housing crisis. So guess what? Of those 10 units, how many have to be affordable? 0. Big honking 0. It's only if you do the density bonus on top of it do you get any affordable units at all. So these were 100% market rate units going in. And what is waking up cities like LA and San Francisco, your map is bad. I mean, like your map was tough because you've got the train station and you've got these bus routes. But imagine LA. I mean, how much of LA is going to be impacted by this law? And it's annoying because they're going to upzone huge swaths of these cities. And can they count any of this towards their housing element? No, because none of it's affordable. And so we're just getting this massive increase in density that scholars are saying actually doesn't work to solve our affordable housing crisis. And so I hope you guys get this on your radar and you can look at it and go whether you like it or not and put in a bill. But this is the kind of bill that may wake up a lot of the cities. Okay, I gotta pass this around. We mailed this off. So people are starting to go, enough is enough.
Why don't you grab the microphone there, Susan, and
Okay. Enough is enough. We mailed these flyers. You got those on there? Super obnoxious. This is a builder's remedy project. It's a real project. It just got, the planning department actually just said it's now finished, or what are the?
deemed complete.
Deemed complete. Do you think that, is this gonna solve our affordable housing crisis? No. And just to put the icing on the cake, this is owned by a Russian oligarch with ties to Putin, just to make it nicer. And so this is a density bonus project, and we mailed these obnoxiously huge flyers out to all the neighboring cities, and they're talking about it. Palo Alto City Council's talking about it. People are waking up and they're saying, come on, enough is enough. Stop it, Sacramento. We need to get back to where we used to work together to solve our real affordable housing crisis. And this is not helping. Anyways, thank you. Go to ourneighborhoodvoices.com.
So I'm going to do cleanup here and do my remarks about the housing situation here. My name is Seth Adams, and I'm the co-chair of Thousand Friends of Martinez. But by day, I work for Save Mount Diablo, and my entire career has been land use planning and conservation planning. So I have a lot of experience in Contra Costa, including in Martinez, with responding to development proposals and so on. And I'll tell you that part of the reason we wanted to have this forum was because people were saying things about what our position is on housing. And I know that we don't have one, but we have a lot of experience in the group. And we thought that the community should start a conversation because these things are going to be coming before us. So first of all, Thousand Friends of Martinez doesn't have a position or a policy on housing. We've made a whole bunch of incremental suggestions for the general plan. For the general plan process and relative to the housing element. We do think that housing is better on infill sites than on greenfields. We don't think that it should be on the waterfront or the edge of town where environmental issues are more significant. We don't think housing is good or bad just because we think open space should be protected and defended. It's all about the pace and the quality of the projects, even as the state increasingly takes away local control on housing. Our effect, Thousand Friends' effect on housing is minor compared to the lack of an updated general plan until 2 years ago, a still not state certified housing element, state mandates pushing more housing, developer financing and interest rates, rising insurance costs, and a city government with limited bandwidth, which has only been getting better more recently. So our effect on housing is minor, despite what people might want to do in terms of scapegoating environmental laws or pigeonholing us or things like that. What we have had an impact on is location in some cases. Resisting housing north of the tracks on the waterfront, where flooding happens already with heavy rains and high tides, even on sunny days when it's not raining at all. And sea level rise is inevitable. And our comments on the general plan, for example, for discouraging development and grading in the steepest, most fire-prone parts of town, which are also often geologically unstable. For example, in the Measure I Parks overlay that we helped sponsor to require a vote to change open space zoning, and our support for Measure L, the city's vote to acquire the Alhambra Highlands property. So we have had an effect on zoning or on location. We have said areas that should be protected. We haven't said anything about no more housing or anything like that. What we've really emphasized is quality of development, transparency, the government's working with citizens instead of ignoring them. And we think all those things are on a good track forward with the city of Martinez. But they've lost a lot of the control they've had in the past in terms of environmental review or how they can change development. So we decided to have a series of 3 forums. We were going to do one on housing, we were going to do one on economic development, and we were going to do one on the marina and parks. And this is the first of those forums. And so I wanted to put in a few more observations because everybody's got an opinion, everybody's an expert, but not everything is common sense. And among this group, among this audience, we have a lot of expertise, and I wanted to do the same thing that Brianne and Tim did, which is, these are some things I've learned over my 40 years that I think are important to remember. And California has had a housing shortage since the gold rush. It's nothing new. The days of major sprawl in Martinez are over. It's increasingly true countywide as well. We're going to be working with smaller projects, more dense projects, et cetera, but something like Doherty Valley is never going to happen in Contra Costa County again. Anti-growth sentiment is based on the pace of change affecting the quality of life and stretching shared services. It's not based on just, I like green and I don't like people. It's based on the pace of change making people uncomfortable. Housing development does not pay for itself. So you can make all kinds of arguments of build it and they will come and maybe they'll shop in our stores, but building more houses costs the city more money to maintain. What pays off sometimes is commercial and industrial development that can build the tax base of the city. Martinez has dodged several bullets with limited development in shoreline areas where we're going to see more flooding and sea level rise, and in high fire zones because we haven't built all over our hills and ridges. Most suburban development does not generate enough revenue to pay for its own long-term maintenance. And it's to Martinez's credit that we're kind of a traditional grid city with a little bit of suburban stuff on the edges, rather than just a straight suburban city where the cost of maintaining and replacing infrastructure is going to be completely unattainable. New development is subsidized by current residents who invested in existing infrastructure, right? So any new development is coming at the cost of those of us who live here already. And so you make the decision not just based on, I think we should have more housing, but can we afford it? California's housing problem isn't about the pace of new housing. Hundreds of thousands of units have been approved but not yet built in the state based on financing issues and other things. And it's not based on environmental review being too rigorous either. The housing problem is caused by having a lot of jobs, attracting a lot of people here, and the pace of immigration, which I'm not saying is a good or bad thing. It's just a fact of life in California, and that's a big impact. Martinez's biggest strength is its small size. There's less to maintain. It's a gem because it's small, because we all have a say, because we know everybody, and because it's easier to maintain a smaller city than a bigger one. The bigger you get, the bigger the problems get. There are lots of underutilized parcels in Martinez, but there are just 3 active housing applications that I'm aware of right now, as opposed to lots and lots of ADU projects happening, which are really what's going to be the source of new housing, affordable and otherwise, in Martinez to meet all of these state requirements. You need to work with residents to support moderate rates of development. In the past, the city hasn't. And that's why there's been reactions and controversies and campaigns and things like that. And I think we've turned a corner. And so for something like the school workforce housing project that's being discussed, involving everybody from the very beginning and getting everybody on board and making something that everybody's proud of, is the better way to go than development bad, development good. You can't shame people or punish them into accepting change. People love property rights, property values, and their cars. And having, I actually admire Scott Wiener in some ways, and I think he's an ass in other ways. But particularly having an urban San Francisco person saying what densities should be all over California is a little one-sided. And if you just ignore cars in an area where most people have them, you're trying to make the place unlivable. And everybody here has a car. It's a transition that's happening gradually, but everybody loves their car, and trying to act like they don't have one just because you don't provide parking is a recipe for pissing everybody off. Investment in many small projects is less risky than in a few big ones, and that's whether it's residential or commercial or industrial or all kinds of things like that. Fast-growing cities like Pittsburgh are addicted to one-time building fees, and it's not sustainable. Cities routinely trade the near-term cash advantages of new growth for the long-term financial obligations of maintaining infrastructure. The reason most politicians focus on a 2 to 4 year election cycle instead of long-term obligations. If cities are not raising enough revenue to replace and repair infrastructure, the system cannot sustain itself, and we do not have even a fraction of the money necessary to maintain the existing basic infrastructure that we have right now. Cities must invest inward to become sustainable. Expansion digs the hole deeper. And this is a quote some of you have heard. How did you go bankrupt? 2 ways, gradually and then suddenly. How did our ancestors build such amazing places like Martinez? They built places that could financially sustain themselves and that had the right mix of densities to support the economic base, to support the city's expenses. The lessons of the Martinez Marina financial challenges can be extended to all of the city's infrastructure, such as roads, schools, water, sewer, et cetera. And we will be having those conversations and arguments about all those different kinds of infrastructure, like what happens with the sewer plant down on the waterfront when we have sea level rise, et cetera. What happens with the water system replacement, et cetera. We will be having those conversations in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And finally, the only way out of the suburban Ponzi scheme is investment inwards. So I chose a dense little historic city with a normal grid pattern where people lived close to each other and knew everybody, because it feels better to live in a place like that. It's more fun, it's more beautiful. And people here have spent their entire lives loving Martinez and doing things to protect it from the things that would hurt it. And so we want that whatever development happens here to enhance Martinez and not damage it. So that's my 25 cents. We've got some interesting people up here and in the audience. Thank you, Satender, for attending. Satender is also one of the reasons, Councilmember Molly is also one of the reasons we have this forum, because he said in print somewhere that housing is the existential crisis of our generation. And I said, I thought climate change was the existential crisis of our generation. And he said, can't we have more than one crisis at a time? So I'm glad you're here. And we want to ask people from the audience if they have questions for the panelists, but we also want the panelists to be able to ask questions of each other, because there's a lot of smart people here. And who's first?
I have a comment. So one thing I know we talked about is we are dealing in our neighborhood up on Huntington Way. And I found out in my dentist's office the other day, that my hygienist said, oh, you live on Arlington Way, that's really cool. There's a house for sale there that my husband and I would love to buy. needs a lot of work, blah, blah, blah. But our real estate agent told us that we really shouldn't buy in your area because of the homeowners insurance problems. Because we all are getting canceled and then we're having to share resources. We have insurance because we put in this lovely area with open space and properties that aren't maintained, you know. And
What's the question?
the question, it's not really a question, it's something that I think needs to be addressed in this whole conversation. Is the fact that we can have beautiful homes, we can build houses, but the property insurance issue and existing homeowners losing their insurance is a huge problem that needs to be put on the radar.
I'll tell you in my opinion, and I'm facing the same issues because I live in a block where my house is in the high fire danger zone and the other half of the block isn't. Insurance is what's going to make everybody in the country wake up to climate change issues. And so it's both a painful thing and also, get real thing for the entire country. But who wants to talk about insurance? Is it Tim?
Well, I can just say that it is a problem, and I'm experiencing that with many of my clients. When I go to my office in Walnut Creek and talk to regional agents, they're all talking about it. And we did get the letter. I live in your neighborhood. And we got the letter a couple of months back saying that you are now in the high fire zone from our friends in the city because you were required to. So we all have that. So we're all experiencing it. And the question is, what's going to happen in Sacramento? Just my thoughts. This is Tim Farley talking. Is we're a market of 40 million people. Somebody's going to insure us, but we just have to have Sacramento, provide some double underwriting or whatever you call it, the umbrella kind of policies that when disasters happen, that they do, and they will happen. We saw what happened in Los Angeles and so forth. But we have such a large market that there is profits available. And will it be affordable? That's just the question. And I know that many people that are buying houses right now are experiencing that.
Try to keep answers like 30 to 45 seconds.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Who's next? Jillian.
From Rossi. I was born in this town. I spent 7 years in that elementary school, and I know a lot about it. One tradition in that school was to plant trees every Arbor Day. And one broken tree was actually planted by North Turner, the Super Bowl coach, who was a great athlete in Martinez, known nationally. There's other people that came out of that elementary school and went to national. There's all professors, lawyers, things like that. The East Bay Regional Park lawyer came out of that school. One thing I was curious about, how are you going to preserve the greenery in that school? When I went to that school, we had a large baseball field there. And one of the things that I have a problem with the school district is intrinsically they're not environmental. Ball fields turn to plastic, ball fields are covered with pavement. I would like to see that site incorporated in wildlife and fauna in that area. I'd also like to see you tie your neighborhood into the neighborhood across the way. There used to be 2 bridges when the school was there. One of them, the teachers, there was a teacher that lived right across the way, Miss Swinson, and across the creek, what's her name, Miss Branshaw. And the neighborhood kids used those bridges to get there, including the kids that lived in the across that housing authority. At that time, this school was captured almost every single socioeconomic group. It was put in such a way where you had the rich kids out in the valley went there, the farmers from the canyon went there, the middle class across the way by Safeway, Rap Avenue went there, and I already mentioned the kids from the project there, and not literally the projects, but the housing authority. And after that, when this school went away, and I'm getting to this one point, I'd like you to refer to that site as the Montecito Elementary School site. That was the best use of that site. And most people in Martinez remember that. The other things that were used, I went to the adult school.
So other than the name Julian, what's the specific request you want?
I just said it. The request was that you tell me how you're going to integrate that with the neighborhood, how you're going to integrate with the environment, the creek, things like that.
And Helen, could you also just give us a basic timeline for the project that you're considering there?
Okay, I don't have a timeline yet because I don't have a plan yet. We're still learning about workforce housing, so I don't even know if it's a go yet. So we're in the investigative stages, but I've taken down, I know it's Montecito site, because the plans all say Montecito site, and I've been around long enough for 32 years to know it's the Montecito site. But to incorporate that into a name, I can leave notes and I can make it known. I'm not going anywhere. I can't afford to go anywhere because my mortgage is less than apartment rent.
Yeah, well, you're talking about something that the town like
Right,
Martinez.
and I understand about the trees and so on and so forth. When we get to a planning stage, if we do get to that planning stage, so right now, we don't know what we're gonna do, whether we're gonna put the adult school back on that property or what it's gonna look like. Because like I said, it's totally investigative. We'll come out to the community. I would hope that you would at least show us what big trees. As far as the bridge goes, when that bridge broke, that's a city thing. That's not us, but I know the bridge because the kids used to walk back and forth over it. My daycare was across the street when I was a teacher, so I know all about that bridge.
The trees that I was talking about are 65-year-old redwood trees, about 75
Right.
years tall.
So
pretty
we would
trees.
solicit input, but I did read that online when I read comments on social media about this meeting. So I was aware of that concern, but we would hope that you would comment on that when we come out. Comment, should we go forth with any renovation of that? When we do renovation, we do solicit input from community members, staff members, and whoever's on that site. So we did solicit input from the adult school staff, but only on a building because we don't know where that building is.
Yeah, by the way, I live 2 blocks from the site, so I'm a stakeholder in
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
30 years.
you'll know
Yeah.
when we know, but we have no plan yet. So
Other questions?
Can I comment? Oh, I want to comment too. Sorry. Coming from Lafayette, you guys applaud this effort. These things are really hard to do, and I am so. We have a site, a former school site in our city too, that I've been wanting to get something like this. So I hope I can learn from you guys on how you do this here. We have a project in Lafayette that I'm going to vote on tomorrow morning. It's a 100% affordable project, 43 units for developmentally disabled adults. It's called Sunflower Hill. And I hope you guys can get to the point where our city of Lafayette has gotten, where we have complete support of this project by our community. We've had 0 letters in opposition of this project. And I hope these projects are hard. They're hard to organize, they're hard to get funding for. And so, but this is the kind of housing that we all actually need that will make a difference to people in your community. So I hope you guys can get to the point where you can all be supportive of it, but be part of the process, but hopefully can be supportive of it.
You wanted to say something as well, Brianne?
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on the F Street Bridge. So that's the pedestrian bridge. We took it out because there was such significant flooding and storms, 2022 to 2023. There was concern that it was going to take out gas lines, right? And so it will be funded by FEMA money to reconstruct the bridge and put in better supports because everything's eroded away. So it's in our CIP list for the next year or 2 or 3. And I think it's all contingent upon receiving the FEMA money. So I just want to let you know that it's not like lost forever. It's on the list. We're just waiting for that.
So having heard what you've heard, yet anybody else have something that they have a burning desire to speak?
Yeah. Let's see. From the drawing. Oh, my mental health. Okay, that's good.
The builder.
Yes. Okay, so I just wanted to speak really quickly to this. Nothing that she said I disagree with. All of the laws are laws that are happening, passing. Yes, they're in effect. The nuance and the difference for Martinez, however, is that we don't have the economic attractiveness to developers the way Menlo Park has, right? So what she's saying, I think, plays into the fears that we all have. Michael has spent his entire time in Martinez trying to make, please don't take offense, developer-friendly policies so that way we can get housing built in Martinez. Nobody wants to build in Martinez. A few do, not very many. We've had the builder's remedy in effect since January 31st, 2023. We're going on.
Someone should explain builder's remedy.
Builder's remedy is when you don't have your housing element approved by the state, right? We could have submitted it, but if it's not approved, the builder's remedy goes into effect. And what does that mean for builders? They have to follow what rules?
No rules.
No rules. So there are no rules currently in effect for developers in the city of Martinez, been in effect for over 2 years, and we've had 0 builder remedy projects. The builder's remedy is not our problem.
We must
The
be
law-
doing something right. Is that what you're saying?
So Seth's saying we must be doing something right. I would argue that I gave a whole list of reasons why we do want housing. There's a whole bunch of seniors in our community that need a place to live that can't afford to live here. There's a whole bunch of 20-year-olds, my stepson included, who want to live here. Your sons want to buy here and can't. And so I just want to make sure that it's really clear that, yes, these things are happening in other cities, but it's not what's happening here in Martinez. And so I think it's more important for us to come together and agree on what types of housing we do want. And we need to support, just like you said, we need to support these kinds of projects. We need to find projects that we can support, I guess is a better way to word it, so that we all feel good about this. Right now, it's not a fight. There's no one to fight. They're just not coming to our town. I want to point out just a few other things about how, some other cities are able to build more. They have better tax revenue. And one thing that I learned when I joined city council, I'm sure Satinder, you probably learned this when you joined city council, that was mind melting probably, is how much of the property tax gets kept by the county. If we were to annex areas like Vine Hill or Mountain View, the county would still keep 80% of the property tax, but we'd take 100% of the liability for maintaining infrastructure, police, all of that, right? The area along Morello, and I apologize, I don't know the exact details. I don't know if you do. There's an area that we acquired from the county, I can't remember how many years ago, and the agreement was that more than 50% of the sales tax would go back to the county. There are a ton of businesses that have started since that agreement was made, and all of their sales tax still goes to the county, even though we approved all of those projects, and at no point were those businesses ever associated with the county. So there's a lot of economic issues in Martinez. And so I just want us to be aware of where the real issues are and the kinds of conversations that we should be the most concerned about. Everything everyone said, 100%, it's a worthwhile concern, and by all means continue doing your work. But I just want us to, don't get too afraid of some of these statements, because that's not what's happening here.
Other questions? Tim Black.
So, I just point out, one project I want to mention is the Wyoming project.
Why don't you actually come and use the microphone?
The one thing I wanted to point out was the Wyoming Heights project, and it is a by right project. Be aware when Michael says by right, it means this. It means there's no environmental impact report on the project. It means there's no public hearing on the project. It means that the planning commission never sees it and has no ability to have any input. It means the city council never sees it and has no right to do anything about it. So that's dramatic stuff. And let me know if I'm wrong on that. And on Wyoming Heights, here is a lot that is a project that probably should go through. I don't think it's going to be stopped, and it has good sides to it. But it's in a lot that's set aside for maybe 15 housing units, and 41 units are going in. And it's a housing area where there is not a lot of parking around it, 1.5 housing spaces. So 61 spaces for parking, and the rest is going to get dumped out on an existing local neighborhood. So we can get nailed with some of this stuff. Just don't be sanguine about it. But you're right, we're not getting people jumping into Martinez and trying to.
Michael wanted to talk about Wyoming project.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to it. So the Wyoming Heights project is proposed within the city's community services overlay district. It's an overlay district that was planned for as part of a housing element. And it's envisioned for religious institution sites because many of them are underutilized for the majority of the week. However, saying that, while we had it as a housing element site, there also was a state law that passed, and so this was an implementation tool of that state law, Senate Bill 4, if anyone's curious to look further into it. So it is something that could happen in other portions of the community. With this project, though, I think it is important to point out that with those 41 units that are currently proposed and are under review, it is a project where it's predominantly made up of duplexes. It isn't necessarily a project that's one larger building. So I want to make sure that's clear when you're envisioning what this looks like. And so it could have been a very different project than what's actually proposed. It is absolutely a change for the neighborhood, assuming the project goes forward, as Tim indicated.
Could you describe the effort on adopting objective standards and what powers that will give the city, Michael?
Yeah, so
in 60 seconds.
Yeah, so we talked about objective design standards earlier. It does talk to the form and aesthetics of what a project will look like when they're quantifiable standards. However, I'll use the Wyoming Heights project as the example. It's a project that is using state density bonus law, and so they have a certain number of concessions and waivers that are allowed as part of that project. They could waiver their way out of most of our objective design standards if they were in place at this time, based on the project having a certain number of affordable units.
Other questions?
Yeah, Ron Klein, I have a question, and I'm not sure who controls that. A lot of information came out. Listening to what Brianne said, the vacancies on Main Street. Helen said, getting a professional teacher coming in and being without salary being 65,000. Who does move into Martinez? There are homes that are vacant and available. Who is moving into Martinez?
Well, I can certainly address some of that. As I said, it's still an affordable house, a community for first-time home buyers. And I agree with Ms. Rossi that many people have to move farther away, but people are still moving into Martinez. It's desirable. It's the most affordable 680 corridor community that I pointed out earlier. So we're seeing that there is a demand. We're seeing people that have the large home where their kids have grown. Maybe it's just one spouse has died. They want to move downtown. They want to come down here, but there is the housing stock that they have. We are seeing families move to Martinez because they can't afford Danville or Willow Creek.
If you go to the farmer's market and count the number of strollers, you will absolutely support that. That said, we did get a report out, and Sudhinder, if you want to jump on the microphone, we did get a report out from an economic analysis last year that in general, the demographics for Martinez are getting older. And that, I think, reflects not that older people are buying homes, but that there are more people that are aging in place, and homes that used to have 4 people and 2 of those were kids. Those kids have grown up, they've moved away. And so the turnover of housing stock is not quite as fast as we would like. So homes, fewer people, that's probably why our overall population is going down. But when the houses do sell, you're getting young families that are moving in. So it's interesting that the demographic report doesn't align with my personal experience and who I'm seeing purchasing the homes when they do go for sale.
And Ron, as I see in my neighborhood, a lot of ADUs going up, and a lot of the children of the people that are living in my neighborhood are moving into there, and the elderly parents are going into the ADUs, and there's kids in my neighborhood again, and there haven't been any since my kids. So we do have ADUs in Martinez. I'm sorry?
We do have ADUs.
Oh, yeah.
We just talked about the number of.
A lot of them.
What the relative situation with ADUs.
Yeah, I'm gonna approximate, I apologize, I don't know the exact numbers. In 2023, we permitted close to 84, 85 units in the year, and of those, around 30 were accessory dwelling units. That was an unusual year for Martinez in terms of the number of housing units. Last year, we permitted 18 units, and I believe 16 of them were ADUs. So that's the majority of what we're seeing.
And that's not just an effect on Martinez, that's happening all over Contra Costa County. ADU production is up. We're a very desirable county in general to produce ADUs because we have a little more land than some of our more denser cities. We love our ADUs in Lafayette. That's part of a state law. So our Neighborhood Voices doesn't undo any of the state laws as they stand. The city would have to take an action to undo any law. And I would imagine the ADU laws, most people support, right? And that would be one state law that most cities wouldn't touch. You know, we kind of like our ADU production. And it is helping families, either get some extra income or downsizing and having their kids stay there or the parents move in. We're seeing that all over Lafayette as well. And that's a wonderful way to get, incremental density that isn't too tough and can actually help families with what they need. So big fan of ADUs.
So one of the things I want to point out is we are going to be doing 2 more forums, one on economic growth or economic development and the other on the marina and parks. But we put out white papers on some of these topics that you can find QR codes for in our e-blast. I'm sure Mark will attach it to the end of the recording of this event. And one of them is about housing. And I wanted to just put out a few demographic figures and also about the history of housing development in Martinez and where we started in 1849, where we ended up before the World Wars, what caused the city to grow, and then ultimately what kept the city from growing too much, which was 4 regional parks and a waterfront, protecting the steep, most sensitive stuff. Concord and Pleasant Hill growing into the spaces on the edges. But some demographics, because I was talking with Brianne earlier I think in the new year, and she startled me because I hadn't realized that Martinez's population had dropped. And that's happened a couple of times in history, not very often. It's happened in California also, obviously, and now it's coming back. But 27.2% of Martinez is under 18. 17.6% is 65 years or older. 70% is housing owner occupied. The median value of a house is $824,000 or $25,000. The median mortgage is $3,075. The median rent is $2,265. We've got 14,673 households. The mean travel time to work is 30 minutes. The mean household income is 125,000, and all of this on 12.6 square miles, of which I think 1 mile is water. Anybody have any other questions? Satinder, or is it a comment?
It's a response to.
You want to come up and use the?
Sure. Yeah.
Be profound.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who I may not have had an opportunity to meet, my name is Satinder Malhi. I am the District 3 representative on the Martinez City Council. Just wanted to thank all of our panelists here for a very informative conversation. In response to, I believe, Mr. Klein's question, good to see you, sir. I wanted to say that, one of the things that's been really eye-opening for me since I joined the council is just walking around and getting acquainted with a lot of the neighborhoods that are in my pocket of the city, one of which is the new Pine Meadow subdivision, the Traditions. And I've walked there and getting to know some of the new residents that have moved in. And one thing that's really been eye-opening to me, the question was really, well, who is moving into Martinez? There's a lot of multi-generational families that have moved in, more diverse families. I'll just give you an example, okay? I grew up here in Martinez. There's probably maybe 5 or 6 Indian families in this whole town. I was related to half of them, okay? And I kid you not, on this one street in that new subdivision, there's 4 Indian families.
Nice.
And they're multi-generational, you know, they've got, some of those homes have attached ADUs to them. And so the grandparents are there, you know, with the kids and then their grandkids. And it was just so incredibly eye-opening for me. I remember I ran home and I told my mom, I was like, you're never going to believe this. I was like, I got invited in for samosas and chai. Like, I never thought that would ever happen. This blew my mind. And, you know, but I got to talking to them. I'm like, so what brought you to Martinez? You know, and really it was, you know, during the pandemic, you know, a lot of them were coming in from, say, Fremont, San Jose. They were coming from San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, but they're like, this is more affordable. We could get more bang for our buck out here. And it was quiet. They loved the quality of life. They loved the open space, the relatively low crime rates, right? The good schools, all of that, you know, so that's, you know, that really gave me some unique insights. And I think that, you know, something to kind of keep in mind here, especially for those who have been in Martinez for many, many years, like my family, we've been here for 4+ decades now. It has changed. And I'm sure, Tim, you can probably speak to that, you know, just being on the front lines, being a local realtor. And I don't think there's a real sort of full appreciation coming out of the pandemic, just how many new families have moved in, and particularly, like Bree said, young families that have come in. And I think we're starting to see that now. And so they're obviously now here and they're looking for, you know, those, you know, we're talking about the, you know, certain amenities and what have you. That'll kind of play into probably the next forum that you all host regarding economic development and what have you. But it's just something that I wanted to just kind of share with you. It was just an observation that I had just as I've been kind of out and about, because I've been meeting a lot of these new residents. That's one of my first questions that I ask. Why Martinez? What brought you here? What would you like to see? You know, give me that input, give me that feedback. And it's, so anyway, I just wanted to leave you all with that.
Thank you. We're about to wrap things up. I'm going to give Tim one more chance to make a comment because he signaled me. But is there any last burning question from the audience?
In your documents, you talked about investment inward. I was hoping you could expand on that a little. I'm not quite sure what that meant. The sort of bane of California development is adding stuff to the edge of the city with more roads and less dense development, more pipes and et cetera, et cetera. And when you do that, especially in bigger cities, it usually comes at the expense of the older part of town. And so when you stop expanding, which Martinez basically has done, and that allows you to start catching up with some of your problems by investing on not just the new roads in the new neighborhood that's going to get more attention because they're wealthier people, but replacing the existing infrastructure, improving. So when they talk about gateway improvements to Pacheco or Alhambra or Marina Vista, or the project that's going to happen with potentially on the school site, that's going to come along with improvements to Alhambra Avenue and that whole corridor and things like that. So that's where the city will be correcting old problems rather than just taking on new responsibilities. Infill is basically when it's surrounded on 4 sides by existing development, whether it's smart growth or not is a whole other thing. Tim, you had a
I'll be brief for sure. Beginning in 1962 with the opening of the Martinez Benicia Bridge, and in 1967 when Sun Valley Mall opened, downtown Martinez experienced a 40-year decline and decay. And there's a library at the bottom of City Hall downstairs where 40 years of reports and white papers are there. They all say the same thing. We need more density downtown. But I want to give Brianne and Satinder and other members of the city council a credit, because I don't know about you, but I've been aware of downtown Martinez in my awareness since 1970, and has never looked so good. We have breweries and yoga studios and art studios, but these are private investments. We have to support them. And what do those reports say after 40 years? They all say the same thing. We need more bodies downtown. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with tonight, that you guys are doing a great job and we need to continue.
But there's lots of ways to get more bodies besides building houses for them, including making Martinez an outdoor mecca and attraction for people from throughout the region. So we want to thank all of our panelists, Susan Candell, Helen, Rossi, Tim Farley, Brianne, Zorn, Michael Cass from the city. We want to thank the 1,000 Friends Steering Committee, which put together this event, including Mark Thompson on tech. We want to thank all of you for coming. 1,000 Friends is basically a conservation organization focused on electing better representatives and good government that also looks at development projects, and we can't do it without your support. So go to 1000friendsmartinez.org and you'll find a QR code where you can make, hopefully, a recurring donation to 1000 Friends of Martinez. It's 2 clicks once you get to our website in order to make a $5 a month donation to 1000 Friends of Martinez, or $1,000 a year if you want. And that'll help us do this kind of work. When we talk about economic development at one of the 2 next forums, we're going to be talking about just the kinds of issues these 2 have been bringing about how to make Martinez thrive. Peggy Houston is going to talk about getting involved with the organization. So let's thank everybody, our panelists, everybody.
Thank you. And I am Peggy Houston. I have been in Martinez resident since 2003. Grew up in Alameda, moved away, had the opportunity to live a couple other places in the country, moved back to Alameda, raised my children there, but decided I wanted to be where there was open space. And I found Martinez, and that's what brought me here. And then since I've been here, I have been looking for opportunities to get involved in our community and to maintain what I love about this community. It does have a similar feel to Alameda, the small townish, and I want to keep that, but I also want to support the growth here, the smart growth here, and maintain the open spaces so that I can continue to get out there and hike when I can continue to get out there and hike. And so 1000 Friends has given me that opportunity to get involved. And so if you're not a member yet of 1000 Friends, and I know we have several here that are, I want to encourage you to become a member. We're welcoming everyone who wants to participate in the areas that we support. Preserving our open space is one of those areas. Managing the growth in Martinez is another area. And electing great people into our leadership is a third area where we focus. There's lots of opportunities, and I know that the time is limited for folks to offer. And so, anything from helping us plan our annual fundraiser to doing research on some of these key issues that we want to focus on, we're looking for somebody to help us with communications, who's a communication expert, to get the word out there so that more people find out about 1000 Friends. So use the QR code that Seth was talking about, and we hope to see you at future meetings.